Welcome to another lecture of pharmaceutical jurisprudence, and in today's lecture we will be starting with the export of alcoholic preparations. So let's start. Now talking about the export of alcoholic preparations, so such preparations they can be exported either under a bond or they can be exported under claim for rebate duty. Right, so we'll be studying about the difference in these two export categories in our coming slide. Now as you can see, there is a difference in the export under duty and the export outside the bond, right? So we'll first understand about the export under bond, right? So this particular kind of export can be done without the payment of duty. The exporter who is applying for such an export should write an application in triplicate to the excise officer. Then the exporter should mention the means of transport, meaning that whether the transport will be done through land, through sea or through air or post, right? Then the exporter should give separate application for different means of export, right? If single product is being exported by different means, then different application should be given by the exporter. Then all goods should contain the serial number, the owner's name and mark, the identification, specific identification mark of each owner, total quantity of the goods which are being transferred or exported, the alcoholic strength of that product, name and address of the consignee, and the gross weight of each package should be mentioned. Then excise officer puts his official seal on each of the package before exporting, and the excise officer returns the duplicate copy of application to the exporter, right? Then coming to the export outside the bond, this is mainly done with the payment of the duty. Then the exporter applies in duplicate to the excise officer. He writes an application in duplicate to the excise officer. Then the person who is exporting a particular product should give at least 48 hours time notice before exporting date of that particular consignment. Exporter should present entire consignment to the excise officer for analysis. He can have a look at the entire consignment. The excise officer can take samples from the consignment for analysis. He can permit the export of such products, and if the products are not of standard quality, or if the excise officer finds that the reports are not appropriate, that he can even hold the consignment, right? Then all the goods should contain the serial number, owner's name and the identification seal, total quantity of goods which are being exported, alcoholic strength present in that particular drug product, name and address of the consignee, the gross weight of each package should also be mentioned. Then the excise officer puts his official seal on each package before the product is exported, and the excise officer returns the duplicate copy of the application to the exporter after his signature. Now after the export of alcoholic preparations, the next important topic under this is the interstate transport of alcoholic preparations, right? So the transfer in between states can be done only after payment of the duty, right? The consignor and the consignee enter into a bond by paying certain amount of security money. The application for the removal of goods from a particular godown or from a particular store, it should be made in triplicate to the officer in charge of the warehouse from where the products have to be removed, right? Then after getting the application, the officer completes the removal certificate in the application and sends the duplicate to the officer in charge of the warehouse where the products are to be sent, right? And the duplicate copy is sent to the consignor. He also delivers a transport permit to the consignor. Then the consignee should present the triplicate copy which is duly signed by the officer in charge, and with the certificate which the officer in charge sends him to the officer in charge of the warehouse of removal within 90 days, and if he fails to present the same within the period of 90 days, then a duty has to be paid within 10 days. Now coming to the offences and penalties. So there are certain categories of such drugs. For example, if the offence is done by the licensee, if the offence is done by the excise officer, or if the offence is done by the public. So the first point is if the offence is done by the licensee. The first is failure to follow license condition and pay duty. Then the person is liable for a imprisonment up to 6 months and a fine up to 2,000 rupees. Then the second is disorderly keeping of stocks and accounts. He is liable for a fine of rupees 2,000. Illegal sale of goods on which duty should be paid, then he has to pay a fine up to 1,000 rupees. Failure to furnish the export proof, a fine of 20,000 rupees. Failure to provide or maintain weighing and measuring devices, fine up to 1,000 rupees. Failure to provide maintain facilities for locking, fine up to 200 rupees. The second category is offences done by excise officer. The first offence is failure to do duty. He is liable for an imprisonment up to 3 months or a fine, or both. Now the second one is vicious searches. So for this, a person is liable for a fine up to 2,000 rupees. Disclosure of information, the person is liable for a fine up to 1,000 rupees. Now by the public, if there is any malicious information, then the person is liable for an imprisonment up to 2 years or a fine up to 2,000 rupees, or both. So thank you so much, dear students. This was all in today's lecture. Today we studied about the export of alcoholic preparations. If you have any queries, any doubt in today's lecture, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.